Welcome to this week's episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm. This week, we hear from Scotty Walden, the head coach at Austin Peay, as he shares how he got his first opportunities in coaching, the learning curves he experienced throughout his career, and how he has grown into the coach he is now. But first, a word from CoachComm.
Deuce left, check with me. If they're in quarters match, we're going to Pittsburgh or Ohio.
They're in zero.
Let's go. Hippo, Seattle, wide choice. If we call the protection right, it's 6.
When a play call is the difference between winning and losing, your headset choice could be your most important decision. When the call counts, CoachComm is the only choice for clear, dependable communication. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
We got it, guys. Good job.
Now, let's get inside the headset with Coach Walden.
Coach Walden, what's happening, man? How are you?
Hey, Mario, I'm doing great, man. Pleasure to be on here, brother.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to have you, man. I appreciate everything you've done over the years for the AFCA and what you do for those young people, man.
I mean, hey, it means the world. Like I was telling you, man, like 35 under 35 is one of the greatest things I've done in my career up to this point. I'm not just saying that, man. It was awesome, and you guys are first class. I appreciate what you guys do for coaches and for the game, and you know how I feel about you and Todd Berry and everything you guys do. So anytime, man, I get the honor to come on here and just talk to you guys, chop it up. It means the world. So we're definitely, I'm honored, in Austin Peay. We're honored as a university to get to be associated with the AFCA and all you guys do.
Absolutely, Coach. Well, I appreciate that shout out, man. Well, let's go ahead and dive into this thing. I was talking to you a little bit before the podcast got rolling about, tons of transfers. Transfer portal been kind of a hot topic. The NIL been a hot topic, and something I'm personally passionate about is I made the decision to go play for Todd Berry back in 2002 up at West Point at Army. Played, had a tremendous time under the coach. He gets let go. I'm far away from home. This is the military. I didn't really have a strong background in that, and I decided I wanted to transfer a little closer to home. Been from Texas or whatnot. So, in the transfer portal days, sometimes it's easy to make a blanket statement about everybody that's in there. And, you had a unique kind of college career as well, where you start off at Dordt College up in, where's South Dakota?
Sioux Center, Iowa, baby.
It's Sioux Center, Iowa. Yeah. I just know it's cold wherever it was.
Don't know, I promise.
Yeah, wherever it was, it's cold. So, you start off at Dordt and then you go to Hardin Simmons, and then you end your career at Sol Ross. Just talk a little bit about just transferring, man. You don't have to really say much about the portal and your opinions if you don't want to, but just more about your reasons for transferring, things like that.
No, for sure. I think you bring up a great point, man. And as coaches, I was kind of telling you this before the podcast too. Like, I'm guilty of it. We get in this transfer portal thing, and a kid tells us he's leaving, and the first reaction is negative. And it's because he's leaving your program, right? And I'm the hardest part for me with the transfer portal is like I'm a relationship guy, so like I take and everybody I talk to in the business, because we're all busting ideas off each other, trying to figure out how to handle this thing as head coaches. And, the thing people don't take it personal. Don't take it personal. It's, hey, this is going to happen. And I get some of that, but like, I'm such a relationship guy. I mean, I'm not transactional. I mean, there's transactional aspects of this job you got to have, but man, it just hurts, man. And so like, it's hard for me. It takes me a minute to get over it, man. It's like getting broken up with or something like that, and I don't handle that too good. So, but when I sit back and reflect, it's one of those deals where I got to remember I transferred, 3 times. I played at 3 different schools in my career, and I think that as people and coaches in general, you kind of mentioned this. I feel like, we feel more comfortable putting things into categories, saying, this is bad, this is good. This, everything's just got to be streamlined, when in reality, every situation out of the thousands of kids that are in the portal is different. There's different reasons. Sometimes, as we've seen, sometimes coaches are, pushing a kid in there maybe, or, maybe the kid had been there for 3 years grinding and just hadn't got a chance to play, and he wants to play, which I think there's really good things and advantages for the portal that allow people to get somewhere and play. And that's on, like, honestly, that's what happened with me. Like you said, there's only one school in America that gave, this little 5'9" quarterback a scholarship, and that was Dordt College, man, in Sioux Center, Iowa. I got a guy named John Hebner I'm thankful for. He was the head coach up there for a long time, and was at East Oklahoma, East Central, for a little bit. And I think he's coaching high school ball up there in Denison now. But he's a great dude, and man, he took a chance on me, and it was a startup program, and I took the scholarship up there, and it was between that and Hardin Simmons. And when I went up there, and honestly, I probably, looking back on it now, Mario, like I'm like, dude, really, I'm an idiot for leaving Dordt College. I started as a true freshman, started all 11 games. He was, hey, you're going to be the guy for 4 years. You just helped me build this program, and that doesn't happen. Now I look at, I'm like, man, that doesn't happen, man. That's the NAI D3. It doesn't matter. Like, that's awesome, and
right.
And he stuck with me, and I played terrible for him as a freshman. I was trying to figure things out, and he stuck with me, and I felt. And John's a friend of mine to this day, and thank God he is, because he has every right to be upset with me, But I left because, hey, man, my girlfriend, who's now my wife, so I made the right decision in that regard, back to Texas, and it was a little cold up in Iowa. That snow after a couple of weeks got a little. This southern guy right here from Texas, I didn't know how to handle that snow, brother. So that was a new world, So I'm like, yeah, let me just go back to Texas. I left for the wrong reason. I didn't leave because I was upset with the school or upset with not playing. I had it made, and I kind of jumped the gun on that when I look back on it as an adult now. Mm-hmm. And then when I got, Hardin Simmons was my second school, and purely there, and I learned so much from Jimmy Keeling, who's a legend. Like I don't regret any of my stops, man, as we kind of talked about before, before the podcast. I don't regret any of it, because I believe God's got a plan, and he puts you in places for a reason, even when it's hard. You're going to learn something and take something with you. And when I was with Jimmy Keelan and Hardin Simmons, man, there's things that, I told you before, I'm making our staff manuals right now and player manuals, and there's things I'm typing up, and I'm like, man, there's Jimmy Keelan right there. Like there's things that I learned from him that, that I just think are invaluable. And so I played for him for 2 years, but I didn't get a chance to play, and we had a really good quarterback in front of me, and I ended up playing safety for 1 year, and that was I played for a guy named Jay Neiman, who's the D-line coach at Iowa now, who was the DC at Rutgers in Northern Illinois. The best teacher I've ever had in my life is Jay Neiman, and I learned more about defensive football that has helped me as an offensive coach. Yeah. Now there's things that you just that are invaluable, but at the end of the day, I wanted to play. I wanted to play, and so I transferred to Sul Ross my senior year, and my biggest thing there was, hey man, when I get done playing, I want to coach, so let me coach, and that kind of propelled my coaching career, and God makes it work. He's got a plan, and he makes it work. I really believe that, but you got to look yourself in the mirror sometime and say, hey man, these guys are talking about transferring. I transfer too, and I think every situation is different. And the key to it all to me is why what is the real reason why that young man's leaving? Is he just chasing money? Is he chasing a better opportunity? And just some kids are at our level. Some kids are getting paid at higher levels. That's part of it. We had 8 guys, that went FBS from our place. This past year, 5 of them went Power 5. And I'm not saying that like to brag. I'm just saying that's we lost a lot this year, and the reality is those guys, they got some opportunities they felt like they couldn't pass up, and then there's some guys that do quit at the first sign of adversity, and there's just so many different
factors.
I think the reason matters.
Yeah, absolutely, Coach. Well, you kind of hit on it, man. You knew you wanted to coach when you were at Sul Ross, but what was that kind of defining moment, in your life, whether it was high school football or even before that, where you were like, man, this is what I want to do. This is the profession I want to pursue.
Yeah. I was really blessed, Mario. I grew up in Hurst, Texas, and, I played at Hurst Junior High. And I'll tell you what, man, junior high football, like, not a lot of people talk about it, but I'll tell you what, that was honestly probably the most impactful football of my life, because I didn't start playing football until 7th grade. And my mom wouldn't let me play tackle football until I was in 7th grade. And so I started playing, and I was really fortunate to be in that HEB school district. The junior high coaches, like the quality, all those guys could have coached high school football. Like, they were. I remember a guy named Carl Simler who passed away. He was the head coach at Hurst Junior High, and a legend. He probably could have been a high school head coach, and he stayed there. That we always talked about it. He was like that Nick Saban of junior high football, man. We always. I'm serious, man. This dude was unreal, and I learned more ball, and I fell in love with the game. I started to become enamored with like why we're blocking this way, why these guys are taught this. It just blew my mind. And then I got to high school. I ended up transferring down to Cleburne, just south of Fort Worth there, and Phil Young, my high school head coach, who just retired. He was the head coach at Arlington Heights there in Fort Worth. He just retired.
Yeah.
And congrats to Phil. Amazing career and impacted so many lives. And he impacted my life. And when I met him, I learned more about the spread. I played quarterback for him. And then also, I grew up in a single parent home. And so when, I met Phil, he was like the first guy I was like, man, like, he's a father figure to me. He not only would he coach me hard on the field, but he'd take me over to his house. I remember going over to his house and talking ball and getting to see him interact with his wife, his kids. And he always kept that relationship, and he's kept a real relationship ever since high school. I mean, when I transferred, I went to him. Hey, what should I do? When I got job opportunities in coaching, hey, what do you think? Like, he's my mentor, man. And so when I met him in high school, like, I was like, I want to coach. There's no doubt in my mind. And I always thought I was going to go back and coach for Coach Young. I thought I was going to go back to Cleveland and coach for him or wherever he was at. And but he really sparked my love to get into the coaching world.
Yeah, Coach, I appreciate you shouting out the middle school. That middle school era, I mean, that time frame for all of us, man, where, I know I'm similar to you. I was in Fort Worth ISD for middle school, actually, and they didn't have 7th grade football, but I played in the local league. That was my first time in the 7th grade, but just not for the school, and just the difference between once I got to school and, man, just the detail that went into it. Coach Tony Roth, he's bouncing around in one of these high schools around here. I see him every THSCA coaching school, and absolutely appreciate him, man. And that's just something that I'm happy you mentioned, because we don't it's easy to mention the high school coaches, but, man, when you're learning to tackle, learning to catch, getting the wind knocked out of you the first time, those are the guys that are around you, man, and easy.
You don't forget it.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
You don't forget it. I mean, Mario, I remember like I can smell the grass. I can see the sky. I can see everything. When the first day we went out there and they just let you choose, all right, what position you want to play?
Right.
And I was like this close. Like, there was a line for running backs and quarterbacks. And I was like, man, because I really want to play running back. I love running the football. And I was like, man. And then I was like, man, you know what, though? Like, quarterback, you get to touch the ball every play. So I was going to go over to the quarterback line. And then I just learned the game, and they just coached you up. And you remember this too, man. Like, you never came off the field. That was the best.
Oh, yeah.
I was the punt returner. I was playing state. It was the best, man. Like, those were the days, man. Yeah. And it was being a good coaches too.
Well, I promise we'll move forward on the podcast, but that just brought me down memory lane, because I just remember in the 8th grade where you go around and somebody say, hey, what position you play? And I'd be like, running back, safety, punter, kick returner, front line of the kickoff, L4. You just had so much practice. You just played the whole game. Everything.
Played the whole game. It was the best, bro. It was the best. I miss those days. Those were the best.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Well, so you kind of, as you're in college, this is the path that you want to take. You end up at Sul Ross. You play your senior year, and then you end up with a student assistant role the following year. Number one, student assistant year, before we go into that super unique year, the following, what was that learning curve there? What you think so much, especially you sound very much like myself. When I was in middle school, I was drawing plays. I understood how many people should be on the line. I understood coverages. Like, I kind of was always ahead of the curve, but once I got into profession, I was like, man, I don't know a lot. Even playing in the same offense, did you feel that way at all? Or once you kind of got in?
Man, yeah, it was. I'd say that it was a massive learning curve, because the OC I played for, Sul Ross, he left, and then we brought in a new OC, and we were running the flex bone. So, like, we were a spread, kind of messing around with a lot of things, and then all of a sudden we're running the flex bone. I became the quarterbacks coach that following spring, and so I'll never forget, our head coach comes in and throws the John Jenkins book at me, literally the run and shoot veer, the whole deal, and throws the book, and I'm like, what is this? And I read it and learned it and studied it, and I knew nothing about that offense, and we were running it, and so I had to learn how to coach the flex bones, coach something that was abnormal, and I think that really helped me, and then just little things like, man, we didn't how to organize a playbook. Yeah. I was really fortunate. A guy named Jerry Poth, he's a defensive coordinator, I believe, up in the DFW area now. He's bounced around a lot of high schools. A great high school defensive coordinator. He actually came out to Sul Ross to be my O-line coach, but he was a veteran. I mean, he had coached at Somerset for a long time, and he was a friend of the head coaches. And me and Jerry are still friends to this day. And Jerry, just had a ton of experience that kind of showed me I remember being up till 2, 3 a.m. like digging through like the right practice templates to use and learning how to do that on the computer, learning how to put together a practice plan, scripting, playbook, like the whole 9 yards. And so there was a massive learning curve. I mean, it was massive. I mean, I thought I knew something, and man, it turned out I didn't know anything, man. I mean, so that was huge. And then, obviously, getting promoted to be the OC in June just threw an even more massive learning curve to me, because not only is my first year coaching, but I'm going to be calling the plays and running my own system in a system I don't even know yet. I don't even know what we're doing. So going into game one, I wasn't sure what we were going to do. So, I mean, I'm just throwing it at the wall, man. So it was a massive learning curve for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to re-say that again. You did not miss here. Year one, first year. Well, how old are you at this point in time? 23, 24?
I was 22.
You're 22. Okay. I wasn't going in that direction. So 22 years old. What happens? Obviously a coach leaves the staff, but what happens? The phone call, the yell down the hallway for you to come down and talk to coach. What does he say to you?
Yeah, he called, because I was about to. I was working on my graduate degree, and I was honestly about to work on that online and go back coach for Coach Young. Like, we were working it out. I was like, man, I'm gonna get certified. I'm gonna go back coach high school football, and let's go do it. And then I'll never forget, it was June 1st, man. Wayne Schrader called me and said, hey, I want this, our OC had stepped down probably a couple weeks prior. And he's called me and said, hey, look, man, I'm just going to be real with you. I want this offense to be yours. It's your show. You do what you do, and I'll help you along the way, and let's go. And I was like, I mean, you're serious. Like, I didn't interview. I didn't draw anything on the board. He just trusted me. And I played quarterback for him. He knew me. He brought me there. And that's why I'm forever indebted to Wayne Schrader for giving me that opportunity, to a 22-year-old guy that's never coached before. I mean, and he trusted me, and and the cool thing about him and the two head coaches I worked for before getting to Southern Miss was Wayne Schrader and Josh Ergel. They really just let me go, and I appreciated that. They helped me. Don't get me wrong. They helped me along the way. They give me, hey, you need to think about this, think about that. But they they let me develop the system, and they trusted me and empowered me to do it. And but I remember that call, and I remember literally that afternoon. He called me that morning. That afternoon. I told him I was doing it. I was like, heck yeah, I'm excited. Let's do it. And then I ran to the library, man, and because that was like the best spot for just me to think at that point. And I just started throwing it at the wall and figuring out what we were going to do. And it was an awesome opportunity.
Yeah. So I've several times on a podcast over the years have had a guest come on, and, he played at, would you say, Baylor for this example. And he finishes his senior year at Baylor and then gets asked to be a GA at Baylor right after that. And the question I always ask is, talk to us a little bit about how you delineated that line of, hey, I'm not your homeboy anymore. We're not friends. I'm your coach. I still love you, but I'm your coach. Now, once again, I'm asking this question about a GA, in a position group. Now, all of a sudden, you're the offensive coordinator. You are responsible for everything that happens on one side of the football. But there's a group of guys in here that you were probably just hanging out with, in the quads, the other night playing video games and some stuff like that. So how in this position now, where you're offensive coordinator, how were you able to kind of put that line of demarcation down and say, okay, hey fellas, now I mean business?
Well, it was kind of I guess a good setup, if you will, kind of a different setup. It's kind of right place, right time, right setup. Because I was transferring in, I was a senior. So I was an older guy, and we had a really young team. It wasn't like, I really felt like even when I played, I was kind of like more of a coach for those guys. I was kind of more of a mentor. So I was kind of already I felt like looked at it kind of in that way.
Right.
I was never really just like a huge, I still am a type A, like, let's get to work, man. Yeah. Like those receivers used to hate me, man. I used to, after practice, no, hey, we're throwing 5 slant routes, we're throwing 3 posts. Like, no, come on, man. I'm like, no, we're doing, come on. And so, like, I think they already saw me as like a coach, kind of in a sense. And so I didn't, have as much trouble bridging that gap as you may think, just because of me being older than majority of the team. Now, I did have, my 2 stud receivers. I think my quarterback was, who's still one of the best quarterbacks I've ever coached, AJ Springer, and he played overseas for a long time. And I think he was 23 at the time. He might have been a little older than me or right at the same age as me. And then my two stud receivers and my running back were all older than me. One of the receivers was 26. He was old. Like, he was, it was one of those type situations. But they, they just handled it so great. And it just showed me that like if you give people respect, right, and you talk to them, right, and you lay out the vision and you lay out what their expectations are, I mean, people buy into that and they buy into consistency. And so the setup was good. And then the second thing I'll tell you that was huge was a guy named Dennis Darnell, man. Dennis Darnell was the O-line coach for Dennis Francione at Texas State at the time. He was most recently, I believe, at Evangel, and I think he retired. And Dennis is, man, one of the just greatest people I've ever met. A phenomenal Christian coach. I had emailed like 100+ people about not only just like, hey, this is who I am. Like I'm trying. I need to pick your brain. I was also like trying to like, hey man, I will come and see you. Like I will drive and go see whoever. I sent that to, Cliff Kingsbury. Cliff Kingsbury, Dennis Darnell, the only two people that responded. And Cliff and I couldn't work it out. We eventually did later down the road. But Dennis Darnell was like, hey, look, come up on it. This is, in the summer, hey, come up on a Saturday to San Marcos, and I'll give you from 8 to noon. And I was like, take it away from us in the summer, man. Like, and so I drove all the way to San Marcos, Texas. We went from 8 to noon, and he talked to me about exactly what you just talked about separating myself from the guys that are the same age and the guys I just played with. And he was like, look, you just got to make it clear day one. You got to draw that line in the sand and let them know, hey, look, I'm your friend, but I'm not your buddy. Meaning like friends care for each other. Like I care for you, but being a buddy, like I'm not going to go out drink with you. I'm not going to go out do this. I'm not going to, we're not going to be chopping it up in the dorm playing video games. Like, hey man, like I'm your coach. And if this is going to work, you got to buy in. And I'll say this, man, I took his advice, laid that first meeting, and I stayed consistent. And I'll tell you this, man, those kids bought in, and those kids, they were phenomenal that year. It was one of the best groups I've ever worked with because of just how bought in they were to that.
Absolutely. Now, more from a professional development standpoint, what was when you look back on it, I'm sure there was a lot of different things that you probably maybe caught you by surprise, or maybe that you weren't as prepared for as you would like, especially looking back on it now from where you're seated at. What was one of those things that really stood out to you in terms of that first year? It was just no way to know. It was just no way to be prepared for whatever got thrown at you. What was one of those things?
Oh man, like there was so many. I mean, just like everything from having a short yardage plan to the situations coming up in game, having 2-point plays, having every scenario covered. Like there was times in a game where it would just be a scenario pop up and I'd be like, oh my gosh, like I know we talked about it as a staff, but man, we didn't rep it, or I was always so paranoid, like we didn't rep this enough or rep that enough, and like right. It was just like, man, trying to piece it together. But I think probably one of the biggest moments, and it affirmed it later on. I always believed that you got to run the ball to win championships, and I knew I wanted to be spread, I wanted to be tempo, and that's what we do. We play fast as heck, but we're going to run the football and throw shots and spread the ball around and put up points, and that's what we want to do. But I still needed to study some people and get with some people and find my niche. And I'll tell you this kind of was funny. Like the play script I had for practice was, I mean, if I could dig it up, man, like it's on a USB drive somewhere. I'm talking about there might be like 300 plays on that freaking script because I didn't know. Because listen, man, Mario, I didn't know how to script, dude. Like no one taught me how to script.
Right.
So like I'm sitting there and I've got dang near every play in our playbook on the sheet. And I'm just like, okay, like I'm gonna call this because I like this versus that. Okay, I'm gonna call this. And then it got to a point. It was like, what? I mean, I wasn't even scripting practice. I was just calling it. Then I started to figure out like what we were good at, what our kids could do. And then I started, kind of getting with, I met Kendall Briles at the Angelo Clinic that year, and he talked about, and that was kind of when Baylor was hot and doing their thing and offensively, and he was talking about how they don't script practice, and I was like, hallelujah, okay, I'm not too far off. All right, good, like because that was I just think like you have to work as a play caller on calling plays in practice, and it doesn't mean we're just throwing like stuff at the wall. Now I was really bad my first year. I mean, I was throwing everything because I didn't, I knew these set of game plan plays I liked. But then, hey, but what if this situation comes out? I may want to do this. I think I really learned how to manage practice and rep over the years, rep what we're going to run as opposed to just everything, right? But not scripted practice was kind of validated that offseason, but I had way too much in. I learned that from the jump and then just managing and then just realizing hey man, like it's about players, not plays.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that took me probably till late in the year to realize that I don't have to, I'm going to try my best to call the perfect play, put our guys in position to be successful. But at the end of the day, I got to make sure the right guys are touching the football.
Absolutely.
And that was something I really learned that year one.
Yeah. I think that's something that a lot of play callers, get to learn earlier in their play calling career, because it's just so easy to get caught up in the schematics and, they're running this coverage, so this should work, and all of a sudden you're not giving your best player the ball, and that was something I've always hung on to whenever I got around the offensive coordinator. Really, really game plan about the players, not necessarily the plays, and I always thought that was special. Now, you get the opportunity to go to ETBU shortly after that. Josh Ergel was a good friend of us here at the AFCA. I know it was a special opportunity for you. Once again, you're an offensive coordinator. You're 23 now, all right? Big. Now, you learned a lot. Sounds like you learned a ton that first year, but you're still a young guy, still super wet behind your ears, and still have a lot to learn about the profession. Being able to, number one, just get that job, it had to be huge just to get it. What did that do for your confidence? And then what was still some of those learning curve things that you're running into year 2 and year 3?
Man, I learned. I owe a ton to Josh Ergel. He taught me, in my opinion, how to be a Division I college football coach. Because that year one, we come back from Christmas break at Sol Ross after that season, and our head coach got let go, and so that spring, I'm sitting there and we're running the off-season program. It's like me and like 3 coaches. That's all we got. Yeah. And those guys, we were working our tails off with those kids every day, and but not knowing the future. And so I got kind of thrown into college football, saw the rough side of it, to where it's like, man, where's my home, right? I don't know what's going on. And luckily, Josh, I got a call from East Texas one night, and I answered the phone and told me, I saw he just got the job, and he was like, just tell me, because I was a graduate assistant. That was the kind of the unique thing. We only had 2 full-time coaches at Sol Ross. I was the OC, but I was a GA. I was teaching golf class. I was like, I was in charge. Like I had to, grade papers and stuff like that. And Josh was like, called me. He's like, hey, what's the deal, man? Like, what's the story? Like, you're a GA and you're calling plays. Like, tell me the deal. And I told him the deal, and we kind of hit it off. And he was like, look, man, come up here for an interview. Like, I would love to interview you. And so I jetted out there. And here's something I learned too. And I tell our players this all the time. And we did suits for our seniors last year. And the reason why is because, I didn't have a suit. I didn't have a coat. I didn't have a collared shirt. I swear, man, I had nothing. And so I'm like, all of a sudden I'm driving out this interview, and I'm like, my girlfriend, who's my wife now, she's like, Callie's like, what are you going to wear? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I had no clue. So, man, I went to Walmart. I kid you not, man. I went to Walmart, and I just like, whatever. I got a coat. I got a little button-up shirt, and I got some slacks and just some shoes, man. It looked terrible. Like I had nothing tailored, nothing. I can't believe I got that job, man. I look like a bum, on the deal. But I walked in there, and so I always tell young coaches, I tell our players, like, you never know when that first interview's coming, so you got to be ready. But the rest is history, man. With Josh, I got there, and I was so honored to get that job, because there was a lot of good candidates he was talking to that had more experience than me.
Absolutely.
And honestly, like he, I think he saw something in me that because I don't think that I just presented myself great on the board to him and stuff like that. I still was learning so much, and it was so simple what we were doing. But I think he could see my passion. I think he could see my love for kids, and that I desire real relationships, and that we had a good kind of a good system that we could mold. And I learned so much through him. Just little things like going to staff meetings and writing recruits every morning. He taught me a ton about recruiting. He was with Les Miles at LSU before that time. And man, he learned a ton working at those levels. And, obviously is a very successful Division I coach. And he taught me what it meant to be a Division I college football coach, because he operated that program at a Division I level. And I've never known anything different. And he's a phenomenal mentor to me. And then he let me go. I'll never forget, we played Austin College my first game, and we beat them. But I remember he came in and he just like opened the door. He would always, it was so funny. He would always let me, because I had to have my space, man. I had to close the door, and I had to get in that game planning, right? And I was real big. I had to have a certain amount of hours to myself, and I'm still that way, man. I work really good by myself, and then I'll come to the group and we'll lay it all out. But I gotta have just quiet, man. And I got to that zone. You know what I'm talking about? Being an old coach. And so he would always open that door and he'd be like, "Hey, you got 50 points yet?" And just close it, you know. And I'd be like, I'm getting there, brother. Just give me a couple more hours. I'm getting there. But then one day he came in after the Austin College game, and we had a great game, and I'm feeling myself, feeling good. And he just came in. He said, "Hey, more tight ends," and shut the door. And I was just like, "More tight ends." And he was what he was doing. He could see the system and see that, hey, it was good. But what he could see the adjustment people were about to start making towards us, and that we needed to start incorporating a tight end. So he's the one that really got my mind going on the H-back position, because we were a heavy 10 and 20 personnel team, and then teams over the course of time started going to odd fronts, started going to the 3 down, and now everybody's going 3 down, 3 high, right? It's to combat the spread stuff, to combat the explosive plays, and you got to be able to play with a tight end in today's day and age of college football, I feel like. And so, like, I broadened my horizons, and we made such massive changes from 2013 to 2014 about our system, and we increased our points per game. I think, by like 14 points. We were averaging, like, when it first got there, 32 points. I think the next year we averaged like 45, 46, and like it's because man, like little things like that he taught me that at the time I didn't understand. Then I started to grasp. It just evolved me as a coach, and now we talk to this day, and I'll talk to him about tight ends unbalanced or something. He's like, attaboy, attaboy, he's like, hey, you finally figured it out a little bit. But he's such a great leader because he led me there. He didn't just shove it down my throat and say, you got to do this. He showed me and then let me figure it out on my own. And I think that was special, man. And so I don't mean to go on a tangent on that, but he really opened my eyes to a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like you said, I mean, you could have the same coach, same situation, everything that happened, and he comes in. Hey, we need tight ends in the game, and I mean that probably changes, honestly, the trajectory of your career, or the success and how you go and attack it. So I am curious of, you've been this super young coach. Obviously, Coach Ergo, he was involved with the offense, correct? He was more of an offense guy.
He was actually when at ETBU he was actually defense.
He was a defense guy. Okay.
That's the unique thing about Josh. He's got an offensive and defensive background. He actually, the year we won the championship there at ETBU was the DC. And he and I, like, that was a fun year, man. Like, he and I just, like, we're both very competitive, and, like, we got each other better, and he got me a heck of a lot better. And, like, but I know he's coaching offense now, but he actually coached defense at ETBU.
Okay. I didn't realize that. Now, with him coming in and kind of mentioning the tight end thing, obviously you go start exploring, implement that a little bit more. And what's that process like for you? Once again, you're 24, 23 years old at this point in time, still relatively new. Where are you going to go and attack the game a little bit differently?
Well, I'll tell you this, Mario. Like, I had to learn how to, operate I felt like I was really good at operating the players. Like, I had no problem getting in front of the team, getting in front of the offense, and leading those guys and developing a system and getting them to buy in. And so that was fun because it was easy because it was natural.
Yeah.
But what was hard for me is I was the youngest coach in the room, having to lead coaches.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of coaches that at that time at ETBU that challenged me in good ways. I mean, not in spite or anything like that, but, like, I'm on the board and we're talking through this, and they're like, have you ever thought about this way? This is something that I think, and there were so many things once that tight end idea was brought up that those guys had well-versed backgrounds in. You had guys in that room that had coached for a long time, and they're like, hey, we need to think about this, and this is how you can use the tight end. And then it just spurned from there. It just opened my eyes to a whole nother world of football, to where, we could be more multiple in the run game, because that's what Josh was getting at, which he was absolutely right. We were very simple in the run game at the time, and teams that were equal or better than us were going to catch up to us because, we were so simple, and we had to create more complexity in the run game for defenses, not for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so the tight end allowed us to do that, allowed us to run one back power, GT counter, GY, stretch and insert zone. And then now you just flooded the market with new ideas and new things. And then we had to develop a system to play off that. And so that process, I'll be honest, I mean, those were some of the most trying times in my career because it got me out of my comfort zone. I'm standing in front of a room, I'm the OC, yet there's coaches in the room that for sure know more than me because they're more experienced.
Right.
And I had to be, as opposed to being combative, I had to be open-minded and say, you know what, this guy has more experience with this. Let me listen to what he's saying. But then I had to take it, and I learned how to take it and put it into how I think
right.
and my system. And now that's carried with us through the years. And it's like, we're so, I wish I could go back and watch that 2012, 2013 season compared to what we do now.
Yeah.
And we're just so much further advanced. And it's because of guys and coaches like that got me better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there from a learning standpoint, because I think, as much as I love the profession and love to represent it, I mean, we're a bunch of dudes that used to play football and compete like hell, and we're all got a little bit of an egotistical mindset where it is hard sometimes for another guy to look you in the face and say, hey, this is a good way or a better way to do it. And sometimes you got to let your guard down and be able to be receptive to that. And that's something that you were able to do. Now, you did bring up a question for me here. Yeah, and this doesn't necessarily, this probably can branch out to even now where you look around your staff, some of the staffs you've been on either as an OC or a head coach, and you look around and you're like, man, where hasn't this dude been? He's on my staff, and, how do I lead this guy that has heard and probably seen it all at this point in time? How do I gain his confidence and trust? Kind of the similar question that you've been a player and having all the players you just got, been a young coach and having all the players you just got through playing with, but now kind of flip side, you're this young coach who's leading the charge, and you look around, you got some of these old guys that you got to make sure that they're on board and you can communicate with them and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think one mistake I see young coaches make is with older coaches, and for some reason I don't know what it is, man. I jive with older coaches real well, like because they've been there, they've done that, and they've had success for a reason. Like I really believe you can learn something from everybody in life and in this profession. And when I encounter somebody who's older, who's been to places, who's done things, who may not understand today's game as well, or young people as well today, that I don't just shut them off. And I see some like young guys making mistakes and like kind of shutting off like older coaches or veteran coaches, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think like you open up to those guys and you show respect and you listen, even though you may know what this guy is saying, it makes sense and it's good, but it doesn't really fit what we do.
Yeah.
Being receptive and showing that respect, I had that happen a lot in that ETBU room and even at Southern Miss, but at the end of the day, there's something I could learn and take from those guys. I never take people for granted. And that's something that I'm huge on because I can learn from somebody at Southern Miss, man. I mean, I can't tell you learning from Jay Hobson, Tim Billings, the places those guys have been. And like, just there'd be things that they may say that offensively doesn't coincide with what I believe. But then I would see their point of view from a defensive perspective and see, okay, how this makes sense, how this fits.
Right.
And I would pick something up from it. And so I just think I think when you show that level of respect and that I'm going to listen and it's a professional, respectful conversation, those guys respect you regardless if they know more than you.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
now there's some guys and there's some guys in the profession, man, that their egos are so big and they're old veterans and it's hard to work with some people. Like it's just that's the truth.
That's the truth.
But I think the majority of people, man, when you show them that respect and that you're willing to learn.
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest thing. I remember Dennis Darnell told me this when I left that day at Texas State because he's a veteran coach. He was like, "Look, keep the open mind that you have because I can tell you're hungry to learn."
Yeah.
And I've always been an obsessive learner. Like even to this day, like I would, if I had the budget, Mario, man, I would pay an enormous amount of money to pay like one of these like head coaches right now that don't have a job or a veteran coach who's sitting out this season. Dude, I would pay like out the wazoo for a guy to just come in here and just to like shadow me and evaluate me, and at the end of the day have some notes and say, hey, think about this, because like I'm an obsessive learner and I don't have it all figured out, but I now being a head coach and a play caller, like I'm obsessed with like running the program in a top notch way and running the offense in a top notch way and learning from people is like it gets me fired up, and I think when people see that, I think they want to help.
Yeah, amen to that. Yeah, in that respect, like you said, I mean, you mentioned that word several times, and that goes a long way in the profession, man. And it's it clearly you've done a great job handling that. Now let's kind of fast forward here. You've been promoted to the head coach there at ETBU. Just paint the picture of how everything kind of went down, all the success you guys had, how it led to that.
Man, so crazy. A guy named Scott Highsmith, who's another mentor of mine. He worked with Hal Mummy back in Kentucky. He worked with me he was my receivers guy at ETBU. Phenomenal human being. I'll never forget, before we went to the convention I got the job in 2016. Yeah. So 2016 convention, he told me it was in San Antonio and he told me, he said, just never forget, man, like hey, one conversation at the convention can change your life. And I was like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? And I'll never forget this. We're at the Texas high school get together. All right. I'm walking through, I'm seeing my buddies, whatever. Josh Ergel comes up and like he and I just crossed paths. He said, hey, what's going on, man? And I'm like, what's up, coach? I mean, he's like, hey, you want to be the head coach of ETBU? And I was like, I said, all right, Josh, like, you can't do that right now. There's like 1,000 people around here. Like,
yeah,
I'm stressed out. What are you doing, man? He's like, all right, let's meet for breakfast tomorrow morning. Sure enough, we meet for breakfast next morning. He's like, look, I'm taking this job. And funny enough, he was taking the job at Austin Peay. He's taking the offensive line job and the co-OC job at Austin Peay. And, it's crazy how it's full circle. But then he was like, I'm telling the president, I'm telling the AD, you need to be the head coach if you want it, but I'm not going to do it without you. And I'm sitting there at the breakfast table. I forgot where we're like at a Days Inn or something like that, man. It's terrible breakfast anyways. It's awful. And I just remember the breakfast was awful. I'm nervous. I'm about to throw up the grits or whatever I just ate. It's disgusting. Yeah. I'm feeling it, bro. I mean, I'm hurting and I'm just like, it's a blessing, but I don't know what to do. And I just said, yeah, I'm doing it, man. I just, walk my face. And Josh, we're driving back. We pull over at a gas station because we had the staff with us. And I remember we're at a gas station, man, and we pull over to the gas station and he tells the whole staff at a gas station, he's like, well, Scotty's going to be your head coach, so it's going to be all right and everything. And they're looking at me, I'm looking at them, and I'm just like, oh, it's going to be an interesting car ride back, And Coach, I kid you not, we got back at like 9 o'clock. I had to meet with the president, the head of admissions, the AD, the whole 9 yards. 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. that night in the president's office. Dr. Blair Blackburn, who I'm forever grateful, gave me that opportunity. I know Josh played a key role in that, but Blair didn't have to give me that opportunity, and he interviewed me that night, and we had the deal done by the morning. And I was 26 years old, and man, I was swimming. I was swimming. I don't know what was going on. I called Josh. I think I bothered Josh more than anything. I called him. He's trying to move his family to Clarksville. I called him every day, and I'm like, what do I do here? What do I do? Yeah. What'd you do here? How this guy? No clue. So, but it was a crazy deal.
Well, yeah, that's got to be interesting because, like, at this point in time, especially being kind of, the personality you have where you're always trying to learn and all this kind of stuff, you're still all the way up into this point in your career. I'm sure you're not asking Coach Ergel about budgetary questions. You're trying to just figure out how to get the tight ends in the game, right? And all that kind of stuff, how to get the 50 points he was asking about. So this point in time, you really are drinking from a fire hose, even more than what you were, a year or so before that. What was the biggest challenge that first season as a head coach?
Yeah, well, there was a number of them, Mario. Yeah. The first one was I learned. Everybody talks about it, but I learned, and that's why I talk about it so much now. But I just learned alignment and unity. How important that is. I saw it firsthand. There were some guys on the staff that probably didn't want me to get the head coaching job. To be honest with you, and that's just reality. And I remember having some recruiting visits after that, like right when I got the job, because we had a big recruiting visit coming that weekend, and I remember that happening, and some of the coaches just kind of being laissez-faire and kind of being like, you could tell they're checked out, and I had to really set a tone and a standard of like, hey, look, man, like, I'm good if you want to go, but like whoever's in this building, we're going to be on the same page. Like at the end of the day, we're going to be in alignment, and because the kids deserve that, this university deserves that, and we're not going to let our egos get in the way. And so we had to find the right staff, find the right nucleus. So that took a lot of time. The hiring process, I learned how to hire people. I'm still learning how to hire people, I should say. I've been blessed to hire some great people, and I think that's the key is hiring great people. I started out trying to hire great X's and O's guys, and that's great. They got to know their ball. But then I started to realize, man, those guys are a dime a dozen. I need to find great people that love kids, that love this game, that are blue collar, that fit my mold. And obviously through the years, I've had to discover a lot about myself, and I still am, to figure out who fits, our culture and our system.
Now, man, whenever we get together, man, we can go. So we're sitting at about 45 minutes now, and I still got Southern Miss, OC receiver, all that stuff to kind of run through. So I'm gonna expedite it just a little bit. All right. So
okay.
Obviously, you have your first season as a head coach, 26-year-old, I'm assuming the youngest coach in college football at that point in time, any level. But I'm curious about the decision, to kind of run your own program, to taking an FBS, offensive coordinator job, co-OC job over there at Southern Miss. What was that decision-making process like for you to make a tough decision like that?
Yeah, I mean, Mario, it was. I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't just cut and dry. It was tough because once you run your own program, there's nothing like it, man. It's just getting to control every aspect of the program and getting to set your culture. It's just an unbelievable thing, and to give that up was hard. But I really trusted Tim Billings, who was an old Texas high school football coach, a Texas guy, and he and Jay Hobson were close, and Tim had been around at Memphis, Wake Forest, you name it, and got me connected with Jay, and Jay was just such a great person and such a great coach. And Shannon Dawson, who was a guy that I'd followed for a long time, is now the OC at Miami, was the OC at Southern Miss, and I was like, man, getting a chance to learn from him. I felt like I was at a point in my career where I've always been hungry to learn, but I was at that point where I felt like I was hitting a wall, kind of, if that makes sense. Like I needed something new I needed someone to learn from, because I'd never been, think about it, up to my career, I'd never been an assistant. I'd always been an OC or a head coach, and I needed to learn from somebody. I felt like to take that next step, and obviously, the jump from Division III to FBS is a rare one, and I thought it was something that, I don't know, that would happen again. And so I decided to take that leap, and man, my 4 years at Southern Miss, phenomenal place. I loved every second of it. My wife and I love Hattiesburg. My son Luca was born in Hattiesburg, so he's we're going to brainwash him a little bit, tell him he's a Texas boy, but he's really a Mississippi boy. What he is.
That's awesome,
it's Hattiesburg is a special place in my heart, and Jay Hopkins is a special human being that taught me. And I met so many coaches along. Derek Nicholson, who's the linebackers coach at Miami now. I could Tony Pecoraro, DC and McNeese. I could go down the list. Buster Faulkner, who's OC at Georgia Tech. I met so many people that I stay connected with to this day that I learned ball from. And I don't regret any part of it. Man, it was one of the best experience, one of the hardest experiences in my life. Yeah. But one of the best experiences in my life by far.
Yeah. And speaking of tough experience and probably a humbling experience and an exciting experience is 2020. Obviously, that year has some connotation to a lot of people in regards to COVID and all those kind of things. And this plays a part of the story just a tad bit. But Jay Hobson kind of surprisingly steps down after week one of that 2020 football season, and you get the interim tag to kind of take the reins for the rest of the season. Once again, this isn't just any season. This is the wackiness of COVID and not knowing what practice was going to look like the next day, not knowing if you, who actually missed the game that year with COVID, as the head coach, you don't know if you're going to be there the next week in regards to protocols and things like that. Just talk about you can even throw some of that management of kind of crisis management mentality you kind of had to have with that COVID year. What did you learn over the course of that year versus kind of what you learned over the course of that first year at that first year at ETBU?
Yeah, Mario, trying time for everybody that year. Obviously, the thing for me, man, was my whole career. I've just been thrown in the fire, as you can see. I've been thrown in the fire as OC, thrown in the fire as a head coach, and then thrown in the fire again as a head coach. And so that shock wasn't as big, but the demands of being an FBS head coach, I got firsthand experience of what that's like. Yeah. From meeting, that was the thing I really appreciated. Jeremy McClain, the athletic director there, he gave me an opportunity. I'm forever grateful for Jeremy for, he gave me that opportunity, and he treated me like his coach. It wasn't like, hey, you're just this interim guy, let's just figure this out. He treated me like, hey, you're running the program, man. Like the day to day. I remember getting on Zooms, talking to donors, calling donors. I remember calling high school head coaches. We ran it. I took it and ran with it the best I could, and wanted that thing to be our own. It was definitely a challenging time for the players. Definitely a challenging time for the coaches. Again, I kind of got thrown back in that role as I talked about at ETBU. Now you're dealing with coaches that are Division I FBS former coordinators, have won championships, assigned 3-star, 4-star, 5-star recruits, coached at the Power 5 level, sitting in that room and looking at this, 30-year-old guy, as the head coach now. I had to battle again, just that dynamic, right? And again, I commend those guys because I thought there was not a day that staff, ever walked in that building and just kind of went through the motions and said, yeah, screw this. Everybody, I can say honestly, worked their tails off during that time. To put their best foot forward for those players. And I know that it became a wacky deal. I should have probably coached in like 5 or 6 games. I ended up coaching in 3. The La Tech game, Tulane game, and the North Texas game. and we had 2 games get canceled. I had COVID, so the Liberty game I didn't get to coach in. Coach Billings took over. But I'm just, I look back on that situation, and yes, I remember the adversity, and I remember the tough part for me too. You got to understand, I was in a new role. I felt like I had to be more of the CEO and the culture driver, rather than call the plays. And so that was different for me, being the CEO, being at practice, not knowing what to do, and things like that. But forever grateful for that experience, because I learned a ton about myself, about what it takes to run an FBS program. In that short time, learned a ton.
Yeah. So that season ends. It's once again crazy because of the COVID, because of losing your head ball coach early in the year. A lot to take away, a lot to learn from it. You got this interim tag on. The season ends. At what point in time do you kind of know, hey man, I'm not the guy? Does anybody call you in there and let you know that? And then what's next for you?
Yeah, no, great question. So it was kind of again, Mario. With my career, man, I guess it's a bunch of uniques and just stop shots, man. So like, here comes Austin Peay and Gerald Harrison, our athletic director, who is still working for to this day, who I love to death. And again, and I'm very loyal to the people that take a chance on me and believe in me, and super thankful to him. And so he comes along, and their season ended before ours, and so we start the conversation, and I guess it was in October there. That he eventually said, hey, I want to come out and see you. And so he flew down to New Orleans. I drove down to New Orleans to meet him, and man, we talked from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. and just hit it off. I mean, just the things he believed aligned with what I believed, and I didn't want to take just any head job. I wanted to be the right head job. And so I had to bring that information back to Jeremy once Gerald had offered me the job, which I wasn't sure he was going to do, because the next morning I was driving back. And I got breakfast, and I couldn't taste it, right? And I'm like, oh, this is weird. Yeah, you know where I'm going. I get back to the I take my test. My trainer, who Todd McCall, I love to death, he calls me up. He always called everybody Big Daddy. Hey, Big Daddy, you're positive. You got to get out the building. I'm like, oh, man. So I got to call Gerald,
right,
who I just met. I just spent, I'm from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. in a room with him, right? I call him and I said, Gerald, like, I just want you to, I'm sorry, but I just tested a positive for COVID. And I called my, his reaction was so like, oh, really? I'm sitting there like, man, I'm so sorry. I called my wife. I said, hey, I probably, maybe don't pack your bags in Clarksville yet. I'm probably not getting this job. Yeah. So I was very fortunate that I got that job. But long story short, I brought that back to Jeremy, and I told Jeremy, I said, I'm honored, to be in this contention for the head job here at Southern Miss. I've been offered. I want to be a Division I head football coach, and I've been offered this job. What do you think? And Jeremy told me, and Jeremy was very honest with me, and I appreciated that. Told me that it was going to be myself and probably 3 or 4 other guys that were going to interview for the final job there. And I just felt like, man, hey, Gerald Harrison, Austin Peay, they believe in me right now. They're 100% in. They want me to be there. And so I accepted the job, and my first day on the job was my first day here. I'd never visited the place, never been here, and it has been one of the biggest blessings for me and my family being here. And not just saying that, man, Clarksville and Austin Peay, the people here, it has just been unbelievable what this place has meant to my family. They've taken us in since day one, and we feel like family every day. We deep connections with the fan base, the donor base, and just the way people treat us, man. We're just it's been an honor and a blessing. And it goes back to, man, God's always got a plan, and he definitely came through.
That's awesome, man. Well, I want to kind of start shutting this thing down, but I'm going to end it with kind of a 2-part question here. What was the biggest difference, number one, between you think year 1 and year 2 at Austin Peay? I mean, I think the records were actually relatively similar to each other over the course of your time there. So it's not a loaded question. Just where do you think you grew? Just being able to sit in a place for 2 years and be the head coach there at the FCS Division I level. And then what was the biggest probably difference or piece of growth that you've seen from 2016 head coach Walden to 2023 head coach Walden? That's a tough one there.
I hope you ain't, man. We might go over 2 hours on this puppy now. I'm joking about it. I don't want to mess you up, Mario. But those are great questions. I'll tell you this: year 1 to year 2, they always say that as a head coach, what a difference that makes.
Yeah.
it's the truth. I've never seen anything like it, man. It's just when you come into a program and I just think that, a lot of times, you come in and your expectations obviously are so high. They're always going to be high, but those guys and especially here, man, these guys had gone through so much, man. Yeah. They just won the championship in 19. COVID hits. They lose their coach. There's so many things, adversity that these guys went through. And I think it was just hard. Some of these guys, it was their third head coach. And so it's hard for them to buy in. Right. And so, we've had 3 straight winning seasons here since the 1970s, first time since 1970s. And so, we go 4-2 during the COVID spring. We go 6-5 during the season in 21. And again, I feel like, we just weren't all the way bought in, guys just aren't, they're just not, you have some that are bought into your culture, some guys that are figuring out, do I want to be a part of this? Do I not? And this is natural, man. It's nothing against them, nothing at all. It's just, I just think, these are guys that you didn't recruit. They're guys that, hey, do I go all in with this or do I look for other places? Things like that. And once we solidified who those people were, and then we went into year 2 and we brought in, a great class, and those guys were just all in on what we were doing. The culture totally changed. I mean, a total 180. I've never seen anything like it. And this is my first time going through a multi-year head coaching experience, now going into year 3. And I know that, obviously, going from 6-5 to 7-4 doesn't look like a big, record change, but 3 of those 4 losses this year were FBS schools. We only lost one game to an FCS school, and that was Central Arkansas this past year. And obviously won a conference championship, shared that with Eastern Kentucky, UCA. But only this school's 3rd conference championship ever in school history. And so we go from year 1 to doing something like that. It wasn't a talent shift. The guys that we had the year before were crazy talented. The guys we had this past year were crazy talented. It was the belief in each other and the belief in the culture and the belief in what we were doing. And I think when you start to get those pieces all aligned and together, man, it's really hard to be beat. And so massive changes from year 1 to year 2. It feels like a totally different. I mean, I can't say in my exit meetings and with the coaches, the coach, this feels like a totally different program. And it does. And right now it's almost like one of those deals where, dudes are doing player-led practices. They're running it themselves. I mean, it's almost like a machine running itself in a sense, because the players have taken ownership, and we've always desired to have that player-driven culture, and that's what they've adopted. And then to go to your second question, from 2016 head coach, Coach Walden to me now, there's the growth and the learning. Man, I could make a laundry list for you. Yeah. The biggest thing for me, man, I think is just going from being an offensive coordinator and an offensive just minded head coach, to now just seeing the whole entirety of the program and seeing things from a different angle and learning how to win games. That experience of how to just trying to learn how to win games down the stretch. Making those key decisions in tight situations as a head coach. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. I've mastered it. Don't just quote me there at all. I promise you that. I got plenty of for that. But being in those different scenarios, I mean, I've coached over 40 games now as a head coach. I'm coming up on 50. That experience, man, I mean, from my first game coaching against Texas Lutheran in 2016 to now, I mean, I feel so much more comfortable with just, little things from talking to the refs to seeing, hey, how the game's flowing. There's a natural flow to the game and game management that you only know if you sit in the chair. Yeah. And I think that I've started to, again, have not mastered it. I feel like I've just gotten so much better at seeing the whole picture, how the defense is affected, how the special teams is affected, and how our players are being affected, and not just the offense, right? Yeah. And that holistic approach is the biggest shift in mentality that I've had since 2016, where all I really knew was how to run the offensive side of the ball, and now going to the holistic approach of how to run a program. Yeah, I'm so much more comfortable in that.
Yeah, man, I got to sneak this question in here, man, because we got a bunch of young listeners that are on, and I'm sure if an opportunity ever arose at your program, man, it'll be a lot of these guys would be interested. Yeah, you talked about in 2016 at ETBU, kind of making sure that everybody on your staff was on board, so you had to go make some hires, correct? And now you're at Austin Peay year 3 here. And I would imagine, I don't know for sure. I know a couple guys on your staff and guys who have been on your staff. So clearly you've had to make some hires over that time. Where have you gone from the hiring process, the interview process, the the fit process, the what you're looking for process when it comes to putting a staff together between those two times?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. The biggest thing for me, I'm going to find the hungriest, most passionate, most loving coaches out there. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for guys that are hungry. You know, and not this, and again, this is not a blanket statement, but what I found is, at least at our level, at the FCS level, you know, guys that are coming down, like Austin Peay to me is my Alabama.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, for sure.
I want people that are here that this is their Alabama.
Yeah.
I don't want people coming down. They're like, all right, I got fired from this job, or I'm out of it right now and I'm looking for a place. Oh, this seems like a cool little, let me go help this guy. Let me be around, you know, and then, hey, let me dip after a year. You know,
right.
I'm looking for the guys on the way up that are hungry, that are, you know, and people ask me all the time, why'd you hire such a young staff? That's really, I promise, that's not like my intention. My intention is just to find the hungriest guys that are on the way up that, and I've found some, you know, some older guys that are hungry. I just can't pay them enough, you know, like, you know, there's things like that. But at the end of the day, I want to find hungry guys that want to make it, that view Austin Peay as their opportunity to impact a place and impact their career. And I want people that are passionate about the game, that love the game, and that love kids and that love people. And that's what's been so special about this makeup of coaches. Like I truly walk through the doors every day, and I feel the same way. I think I speak for our staff, and we genuinely love being around each other. Like there's a genuine love here. Like we're very blessed not to have, like, you know, again, nothing's perfect, but we don't have, you know, hey, the offense versus defense thing or not. I don't tolerate that, number one, but number two, we don't have those kind of people, man. Yeah. It's all about the team and all about the program. And so I'm looking for those young, hungry go-getters that are go-getters in recruiting, go-getters. I want innovativeness. I want people that, you know, I again, I was talking about doing our staff manual. There's a piece in that staff manual that talks about, I want to do stuff that's never been done before. I want to innovate. Innovators are always ahead of the imitators. And I want innovators. I don't want guys that are just the status quo. Cutting edge people, and people that just that love the game, love each other, and that are hungry. And that's what I look for.
Innovators are always ahead of the imitators. I hadn't heard that one before. I like that too, Coach. As always, man, I appreciate my time with you, man. And when we had to fast forward through some stuff, so that just gives me another reason to have you on here in the next year or so, something like that. But once again, Coach, appreciate everything that you do for the great profession, man. And how you're developing coaches, how you're developing players. You know, just your willingness to support us and our mission here at the AFCA. Man, we love you over here, man. So best of luck to you this season, and look forward to seeing you in Nashville in 2024, okay?
Hey, man, I can't wait for that one. No plane ride for me, man. I'm just driving up on that one, man. I'm excited.
Man. There you go. There you go. Right in the backyard.
Thank you, Mark, for having me, man. I'm honored, and we love you guys here at Austin Peay, and thanks for all you guys do for the profession, man. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, Coach. Anytime. Later.
CoachComm has been delivering tough headsets for tough teams for more than 31 years. It's why 97% of FBS teams and thousands of high schools across the country rely on CoachComm. Get the best for your team. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. If you'd like to learn more about this week's episode, head over to AFCA.com. There, you can access every episode and find corresponding show notes. Remember, you can catch every episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm on wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. While you're there, we'd love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your feedback helps us improve and grow. Keep up with the latest news by following us on social media. Connect with us at Inside the Headset, and remember to tag us when you share your favorite episodes. For more updates on all things AFCA, be sure to follow the @WeAreAFCA social media accounts. If you're not a part of the AFCA community yet, visit AFCA.com to join thousands of NFL, college, and high school coaches nationwide and across the globe. Elevate your coaching game with an AFCA membership. You'll gain exclusive access to the annual AFCA convention, magazine, digital library, and AFCA Insider email. Stay up to date with the latest stories and news on the AFCA website. More than just a convention, the AFCA offers continuous education, guidance, networking, and more. Celebrate the past and shape the future with the AFCA. It's about fostering exceptional coaches who create outstanding teams and even better individuals. Invest in your skills and make a lasting impact today by engaging with the AFCA. Your journey starts here.